we'll look at the notes a little bit. My goal is just, though, to give you a visual. Just give you visuals, so that you'll know, oh, okay, here's what it looks like. Kind of reformat your hard drive of what comes to your mind. I love Bible story books, but there also is a tendency, you got to be careful, or even like, different movies, like the Ten Commandments, Charlton Heston and all that, or we watch the Nativity, which shows the birth of Christ. It's actually a very good, very, very well done. And yet, you'll get the geography and think, it wasn't quite like that. So be careful. I want to help you reformat what you think of. Or Bible story books, you read different Bible story books and it looks a certain way. It didn't look like that. And I want to help you with kind of what comes to your mind when you think of when the Israelites were on the edge of the Jordan River about to cross. What was that like? Or what was it, like when Jacob wrestled with the angel of the Lord, Christ, at the edge of the Jabbok River? What was that like? What did it look like? And I think when we'll see pictures of that, I think we'll get to those, you'll realize, oh, that's very, very different than what I picture in my mind when what Jacob was doing. And you'd probably think it's very desert. No, actually the Jabbok River is a very significant river. And there's a lot of green around that, so I think it'll help you on that. Okay? Well, I'm going to open a word of prayer, and then we're going to dive in. God, you're so good to us. Thank you. Thank you for the weather. God, we are reminded of your faithfulness because of the seasons, and we praise you for that you're faithful in that. And then we also thank you just for your sovereignty over our lives, that you work in our lives in a way that displays your glory, and we trust you for that. As we look at your word, particularly related to the geography here, we know that it was inspired. As your biblical text records these different things, it wouldn't, if it didn't matter, it wouldn't be in our Bibles. And it does matter because you put in our Bibles these details, and we know we can trust you in those details, but there are also ways that it helps us in understanding of your scriptures when we understand the geography of the land. And so we would trust you that you would guide us in that. In your name, amen. Okay? So I know you say, where are you in the notes? Well, I'm just showing you pictures. And basically, I don't know where you see it says Jordan Rift. What page is that Jordan Rift in your notes? 27, okay. Yeah, it's kind of where I'm on 27. I probably showed you 500 pictures related to all that stuff, so you can't really see that. But we talked about the Jordan Rift. You look in your notes on page 27. It's the deepest fault line on Earth. It's really in all the Earth. It's from 2 to 15 miles wide. Very dry climate. Okay, very, very dry in that area. If you look at your notes, you can see it from north to south. We've already looked at some of these. It has the Hula River Valley, which was right up in this area, right up in here. In your notes, we saw that. Mount Hermon up in this area, we saw that. And then we went down to the Sea of Galilee, dropped significantly. We looked at that quite a bit. It's the only natural sweetwater lake in Israel, 13 miles long, 7 miles wide, 630 feet below sea level, which is amazing. The Sea of Galilee, we don't think about that. Sea of Galilee is 630 miles below sea level, okay? Because it's a part of the Jordan Rift. And then we talked about the Jordan River, the Jordan River Valley. It's about 65 miles from the southern point of the Sea of Galilee down to the northern point of the Dead Sea, about 65 miles. So it's relatively close. It's not a real far distance. It's about a mile wide, the Jordan Rift, or in that particular area. Now we're going to look at the Dead Sea. Okay, we're going to spend quite a bit of time looking at the Dead Sea because it's very significant. And actually, this area right here is called the Lasan. It's because the Dead Sea actually changes levels. Some even speculate that even during the time of David, he could have walked across the Dead Sea, because we know he does travel across. He brings his parents over to Mizpah in this area over here. So, in other words, this could have been dry land all the way across here, because the Dead Sea, and we'll talk about even today, I think it's about 5 meters a year the Dead Sea is dropping. Very significant. Now, there's a modern day reason for that, and we'll talk about that a little bit why that is. So that's the Dead Sea, and then we'll get down to the Araba, which is in this area, particularly down here. So I gave you this map, which kind of gives you a visual of that, just to remind you of these different areas. Here's the coastal plain, about 7 to 10 miles, very flat. Then we talked about the Shephelah of the lowlands, which is an area from 1 to 5 miles wide. Lots of Bible stories, remember, it happened there. The Philistines, all those battles, because remember, the Shephelah, the lowlands, is a buffer between the lowlands, the coastal plain where the Philistines, enemies of Israel's, were, and the Jewish people generally, during the time of the kings, were up here in the highlands, and so the Shephelah lowland was a buffer. So there's lots of battles, lots of things that are going on. That's always what they're fighting over back and forth. And then we talked about the Judean highlands, which are right in here, the Galilean highlands up in here. Okay, so that's just and then I had it's kind of a cartoonish, but I think it is helpful. It kind of emphasizes the different things. Here's the, once again, and I know I'm repeating this a lot. You say, man, you talk about this a lot. Yeah, because I'm trying to give you pegs that you're able to hang stuff on in your mind when you think of it. It says, okay, they were in Gaza, or they were in one of the other Philistine cities, or they were in the Sorek Valley, or wherever they were, where David's fighting Goliath. Okay, I picture that. I know what it's like. I know where it was. Okay, and so here's the coastal plain, the Shephelah, which is that lowland, which really is kind of the southern central part of Israel. And then here's the highlands, which is where much of the biblical stories occur, because this is the area that really the Israelites primarily controlled during the time of the kings, even during the times of the prophets. Okay, and then we see appears Mount Hermon way on the left, Hula Valley, Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea, and then the Transjordan Plateau. Okay? Just kind of want to help you with that. Okay, so we're going to look at the Dead Sea. Okay? Here's the Dead Sea right in here, this area, right here. We're going to look at some particular places. We're looking at En-Gedi, which is right in here. We're looking at Masada, which is right here. Very, very famous, even in relatively modern day history. Very famous place. We're looking at the Dead Sea. Why is it called the Dead Sea? It's not real complicated. Why?
No outlet.
Nothing lives in it. Why? Because, like Dick said, because there's no outlet. Okay, I don't even talk about it we're preaching on. I'm preaching on Matthew 5:7, which is blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. And we aren't called just to receive the mercy of God. We're called to be conduits of the mercy of God. So I think the Dead Sea is like a great illustration. What happens when you're just taking in? Yeah, I'm just taking in all the Lord's blessings and all that good stuff, and yet I'm not being a conduit of that. We're called to be conduits, not cul-de-sacs of God's blessing, particularly His mercy. But the Dead Sea, the reason it's like this is because it has no outlet. And it's related to the geography. It may even be related, and we're going to look a little bit about Sodom and Gomorrah, what happens back in Genesis 18:19 in there with Sodom and Gomorrah. When God destroys Sodom and Gomorrah, remember Lot and that whole situation? That many people believe that may have pretty drastically affected the geography of that area. We just don't know. We don't know. But the Dead Sea doesn't have an outlet. Okay? Yeah, Larry.
Road-wise today, is there anything that would access the southern part of the Dead Sea?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a road. Road-wise, is there anything to access southern part of the Dead Sea? Absolutely. Like, there's a road that goes all the way along this edge, all the way. We've driven that. I've been on that. From the coast. Once again, what do you have in here? You have the Judean Highlands. You just can't rip across here. You have to go up through one of the valleys. You have to go up through the Ahilan Valley, the Sorek Valley. Yes, you can come over, but it's not going to be a straight shot at all, because you have to come through the Judean Highlands. From the south, like if you're coming from the south, it's much easier to come up to the southern. Yeah, there are roads in here. I mean, this is in this area here very uninhabitable. I mean, there's people that live there, but very nomadic. So it's
from Beersheba, would there be a road?
Yes, there would be a road, but it's a roundabout road. It's not like direct line. It's not like I-90 at all. From here to Chicago, I-90 maybe variates 10 feet? No, more than that. But it's not like that at all. It's very, very through valleys and wadis and all that. Okay. Well, let's look at the Dead Sea. Okay, Dead Sea. Now, just comparison-wise. Okay, this is pretty much to scale. Anyone ever been to Lake Coeur d'Alene? Yeah, you've been to Lake Coeur d'Alene. Some of you probably driven around it. Now, Coeur d'Alene, the shape is totally different, okay? Coeur d'Alene has all these little valleys and different things, but that's to scale. And you probably wouldn't think, you probably thought the Dead Sea was massive, right? It's just this, no, Sea of Galilee, the Dead Sea it's 31 miles from the northernmost border to the southernmost part of and it changes a lot. Actually, that changes 5 meters a year. So about, the length of the Dead Sea, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But it's roughly, approximately, now it's a lot bigger area because it's broader and it's more consistent on that. But that just gives you a little bit of idea of the scale. It's about, Coeur d'Alene's about 25 miles from north to south, and the Dead Sea is about 31 miles, and it can be about, 7 miles across in some places, or very narrow in other places, okay? Just so you can get a scale. Okay, so I'm just going to show you some pictures so you can get some idea of what we're looking at here. So remember, we're coming down, as I mentioned to you, we're coming down from the north to the south, and this picture is just taken right in here in the very northernmost parts of the Dead Sea. I wanted to show you, here's the Jordan River, to show you where the Jordan River comes into the Dead Sea. Here it is. I'll just talk about it right now, is it's significantly less. And this is this is the major reason. It's a major political issue between the Israeli government, the Jordanian government, all that is who controls the water in the Jordan. Because in this part of the world, water is everything. If you have water, you have life, right? And that's so basically people are taking off more and more. There's actually an agreement. They came to an agreement, I think it was 2015, I don't know when it was, where they said, we got to stop this because we got to control this. We have to regulate on both sides. We can't just all take whatever we want because it's not good at all. So that's the reason the Jordan River is much, much less. They say, what did I read? Somewhere like 90 to 95% of the Jordan River is taken for irrigation or pumped out for irrigation. So that's very, very, very significant, which means that you don't have much water coming in to the Dead Sea, which means that more of it evaporates, and so the evaporation is faster than the actual what's coming in, and so it's shrinking in size and actually depth. Depth of the Dead Sea, 416 meters below sea level, and this was a number of years ago. And I think that's about 1,350, 60 feet, roughly, below sea level. That's the top of it. That's the top of the Dead Sea. It's now closer to about 435 meters below sea level, so it's about 1,427 feet below sea level. That's the top of the Dead Sea. And that's why they would say it is the lowest place on earth. This map is in your handout here. You can see the level of the Dead Sea. Like this one, this was quite a while ago, 1,300 feet. Well, it's more like 1,450 feet below sea level now. But you can see the level of it. You can see the drop. This is not to scale, but it just gives you an idea. From Mount Hermon down the Dead Sea, it's very significant. And here's the level of the Mediterranean. Level of the Mediterranean is what? 0. It's sea. It's sea level. But the Dead Sea goes precipitously down from that. And then here's this little scale at the bottom, gives you an idea. So we're about 140 miles from basically Mount Hermon down to the northern part of the Dead Sea. Here's just a little, you probably can't see that, lowest points on earth. It just has all these different low points on earth, Lake Erie, which is below sea level. But then my whole point was here. Dead Sea, 1,400. Sea of Galilee, you don't think about it, Sea of Galilee is one of the lowest bodies of water on the earth. Far lower than, I remember when we lived in California, we had to go to Salton Sea. There's Death Valley. I mean, some of you may have been there, and there's a number of places you probably haven't been. But Sea of Galilee is by far lower than almost any of those places. And you don't think about that, right? You don't realize, oh, no, Sea of Galilee, 700 feet, almost 700 feet below sea level. It's amazing. But the Dead Sea is 1,400 plus feet below sea level, which affects a lot. It affects a lot of it. Okay? And if you have questions as I go, I'm just going to kind of go through this. Last time we looked at Qumran. Remember we looked at the Qumran caves? We talked a lot about how thankful we are that in 1946 and 1956 they discovered all those biblical manuscripts because the people that lived there, they lived there because no one else wanted to live there, and so everyone leaves them alone. That's one of the reasons this area was very helpful for them. Well, I'm just going to continue on south. And there's a spring. This is the closest spring to the settlement of Qumran. And so there are people from the Qumran community, 1st century BC, who came to this area to do farming. And this is right on the edge of the Dead Sea, right in this area, okay? It's literally called Ein Feshka, which literally means spring of the crack. And anywhere there's a spring, like the next spring we're going to go look at is En-Gedi. There is some water that comes through En-Gedi, and David talks about that a lot. Well, there's going to be life there. So we're just going down south. And later you asked that question. Here's the road that just comes north to south. It's coming right along the Dead Sea there. This is another kind of more of a panoramic view of the Dead Sea. We're kind of right this very northern part. And here's what I just showed you is kind of right down in this area, right down in here. Okay, and over here, so Jordan River comes in here. Transjordan is over here. Moab. Children of Israel would have come in from this side when they came in beginning of the book of Joshua. They would have come over down these plains because Jericho is going to be kind of right over in here. So they would have come down these plains, settled in this big, huge basin here where they're temporarily waiting. And Moses is going to die. Joshua's going to take the leadership of the people, and they're going to cross the Jordan River up in here. But the Jordan River, guaranteed, it was during flood stage. It was much more significant than it would be here. Okay, another picture. Dead Sea, northern end. This is also Qumran. Remember I mentioned about Qumran is right in this area right here, the Qumran caves. But then you can see the plains of Moab, Mount Nebo. Why is Mount Nebo significant? What happened to Mount Nebo? What? Moses, God allows him to look into the promised land. He can't go there, right? Because he did not treat God as holy when he struck the rock, when God said, speak to the rock, but he's allowed to look. And so that's where he would have been. So you can see, and he actually is given, it's pretty clear to supernatural vision because he sees much more than you could have probably seen with your physical eyes. Although you could have seen a lot. You could see, but he was looking right over the Dead Sea. He was looking right over it. That's what he was. So Qumran, Dead Sea, plains of Moab. Okay, let's continue on. I'm just going to kind of continue on south. Okay. Now we're looking south along the Dead Sea. So Moab would be over here. This is Israel in here, and Dead Sea. And then we're going to look at a place called En-Gedi, very significant place which we see biblically. Oh, this is just a picture, kind of vividly shows. You can see this was a pier. This was a pier on the Dead Sea. Now I don't know why they have. Most of this is for what do you want to call tourism? Different things that tourists would do because there's just not a lot. They do get millions of dollars worth of minerals out of the Dead Sea. There's whole settling basins, which they have in the southern part of the Dead Sea. So it's a very, very, very valuable resource. So there's no fish, there's nothing, no fish, no animals, no birds, nothing like that can survive in it. But it is very, very, very valuable for minerals. And so that's what it's disappearing. Because 95% of the water from the Jordan River is diverted to irrigation, whether it's to Jordan, to Syria, to Lebanon, and so it's very significant. It's significant that it's shrinking. 2006. Actually, there are some people. It's funny. There were some people that actually swam across the Dead Sea in 2016 because they wanted to make a statement. Now they had to have special snorkels, special masks. Because I remember when we were there, if you put your face under the water, it's like 37% salt. It's like 10 times as salty as the ocean. It will burn bad. So they swam all the way across it just to make a statement. Hey, we need to stop irrigating so much out of the Jordan River. So they are making some changes later. Oh, here's just a picture of it. You can see in 1980, it was 380 meters. But now, and this was 2015, you can see it's about 430 meters, which is significant. So it's just dropping precipitously, very, 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 very significant. It is a big issue. So I'm just going to show you some pictures of it. This is the Dead Sea, kind of looking an aerial shot. Here's that highway again that goes down. You can see just the recession even of this, right? You can see the receding level of this. And I'm kind of about in the middle of this. Here's another picture. It shows the salt deposits, the salt crystals. There's a lot. If it's going to be 37% salt crystals, you're going to get a lot. I know when you're walking on the bottom, so you can feel it. It's these crystals. They're there. It stings. It stings a lot. A lot. Here's another example of the shoreline with the salt crystals where the water has come up on it and receded, come up on it and receded. It's 10 times as salty as the ocean, but it has lots and lots of minerals. I think there's about 1,500 people or 1,600 people, almost 2,000 people that are employed just to help get those deposits, get those minerals. It's a very, very lucrative and valuable resource for them to do that. Okay, well, I'm going to continue on. I'm continuing south, and we're going to kind of move into the En-Gedi area. Okay, actually, this map isn't right. That little circle isn't right. En-Gedi is kind of down in this area, right in here, and it's interesting. Well, this is Nahal David. Okay, why do you think this is called the Nahal David? Because this is where he was. He spent most of his time when he's being chased by Saul, he's in this area. He's right around the Dead Sea and right around this area. Remember, he's appointed to be the king. We have the whole situation of 1 Samuel 16. David is anointed to be the king. Remember that whole story where Samuel comes and bring all your boys, and he brings all his boys. Nope, none of these guys. There must be another one. And I didn't even think about the little one, the young one. He's probably a teenager, and we're not sitting down to eat until he comes. Well, he comes, that's the one. Why? And then God makes a huge statement. He says, why? God doesn't look at the outward appearance. Samuel, stop it. That's what we did last time with Saul. We're not doing this again. We're looking at the heart, and God is looking at the heart and said, David is a man after my heart. So God chooses him. He anoints him in 1 Samuel 16, and then what happens in 1 Samuel 17? David and Goliath. We have the great battle that shows this is the king. This is the next king. This is the king that's been anointed. Saul is still the king, right? Because Saul is in his tent, quaking. They're having this mano-a-mano, one-on-one. Whoever wins the battle, they win. Who should have been out there? Saul. He's the biggest. 2, he's the king. But he's not, because he's not a man of God. He's not a man that will trust God. And that whole situation where David says, who is this circumcised Philistine that should taunt the armies of the living God? This isn't right. And so David walks with God, has faith in God, and God uses him to kill Goliath. They all run down back into the Philistines, run across the Shephelah, run across into the coastal plains. The children of Israel pursue them. And that begins the setup. David then comes to live with Saul because Saul he says, being attacked by a demon. And so David would play music to him, to soothe his soul. And yet in the middle of that, Saul knows what? He's been anointed to be the king. He becomes Jonathan's best friend. That's a whole story. And then all during that time, as it continues on, Saul gets more and more upset at David. He tries to kill him, tries to pin him to a wall with a javelin twice. Then he's chasing him. He comes to Jonathan. Well, Jonathan tells him, I'll send you a message. There's the whole thing with the bow and arrow. He says, if I tell the young man to get the arrows and come to me, it's safe. If I tell him to go past further, that little code thing. And so that's what he says. And that's where they weep, because they truly have a brotherly affection for one another. And Jonathan says, my father intends to kill you. You cannot. Which is amazing. Why is it ironic what Jonathan is doing? Why is it ironic? What? He should have been the king. He's the son of the king. And he's a godly man. He truly is a godly man. He should have been the king. And yet Jonathan recognized what? The Lord's will. He knows, nope, God has said that David was the king. What's the other thing wrong with Jonathan being the king and Saul? Tribe. What tribe? What tribe was Saul from? Benjamin. Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin. Wrong tribe. Because at the end of Genesis, remember when Jacob blesses her, he says that the kingly line will be from what? Judah. And so David is from the right lineage, and he is the king that God has chosen. And so then, they have that whole story all throughout 1 Samuel. We go through all the rest of the book of 1 Samuel, where Saul's trying to throw out the Philistines, and yet at the same time he's trying to kill David, and Jonathan's trying to intercede and tell him, no, he's a godly man. Don't try and kill him. Well, at the very end of 1 Samuel, Saul gets killed with Jonathan and 2 of his other sons on Mount Gilboa. They're killed. But prior to that, this is where it's all going to happen. So we're going to look at it a little more carefully. And that's a short answer to a long answer to a short question. I want you to have the background. What's happening in this area? So when you think of 1 Samuel, think of this area. That's what it is. Or First Chronicles, okay? So this is kind of that area again. We're looking at En-Gedi, okay? This little En-Gedi. This is the kind of the modern-day kibbutz of En-Gedi, which is ancient En-Gedi, where David would have been. So you're looking south along the Dead Sea. I remember the Lisan, that's the area where the Dead Sea kind of is real shallow, kind of almost goes across. Sometimes they even think you could have gone across in that particular area. And then we'll talk about this a little bit later, Masada. which is in this area right in here. But this is the area. David would have been all in this particular area. Here's kind of a view from the southwest, okay? So here's En-Gedi. The other picture is taken from up here. Here's the Dead Sea. Transjordan Plateau is over here. Sea of Galilee is up in here. Now here is this wilderness of Judah. Remember we talked about the wilderness of Judah where Christ, where John the Baptist where Christ goes out and he's tempted by Satan, and that would have been all this area. That was New Testament, Matthew 3 and 4. But then this would be the area. You can see how rugged it is. This is the En-Gedi area. Here's one of these wadis, and then the halls or rivers. And then here's a scripture passage related to that. And this thing of 1 Samuel. When you think of where do you read about this whole situation with David and Saul, it's 1 Samuel, because 1 Samuel is the transition between the judges and the kings. Samuel was the last judge, right? Samuel's the last judge, and he's going to be a transition to the first king, which will be Saul. And ultimately, the true king, which at the very end of the book, Saul's killed, and then David becomes the king at the beginning of 2 Samuel. Okay, but here, 1 Samuel 23, when David and his men went to seek him, when Saul and his men to seek him, and they're not wanting to just befriend him. They want to kill him. That's his whole point. Which tells you how much Saul wasn't a man of God, right? Because Samuel's the prophet. Samuel anointed Saul, right? Samuel anointed Saul originally, but now he anoints David. And so for Saul, because God has rejected Saul because of all his disobedience, when he sacrificed, when he didn't obey the Lord. And so Saul, he's not a man of God because God has spoken. God has said the next king is going to be David. Now, what should he have done? He didn't necessarily have to turn over right then, but at least don't try and kill him. At least make the transition, relatively helpful. Saul reigned 40 years, David 40 years, Solomon 40 years. So at least he could have made it an easy transition. So this happened a lot of years. This didn't happen over 6 months. This was many years that Saul is chasing David. Saul and his men went to seek David. They told David, there's a lot of spies out there, they love David, they don't like Saul. He came down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon, which is in this area. And when Saul heard, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. Saul went to one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. And David was hurrying to get away from Saul, for Saul and his men were surrounding David and his men to seize them. This is very touch and go. David's about to get killed. Now, he's not going to get killed. We're fine with it, right? You know the rest of the story. But if you were David and you're like, wait a minute, Lord, this doesn't make any sense. I thought I was with the anointed king. I'm about to die. No, he's very concerned. And they're surrounding him. But a messenger came to Saul and said, hurry and come, for God has sovereignly sent it doesn't say this, for the Philistines have made a raid in the land. God is in control. He's going to protect David. If it means, hey, we're going to have those Philistines act up again, having to start destroying the villages on the Shephelah side, the coastland, so Saul has to leave pursuing David to protect his people. So Saul returned from pursuing David and went to meet the Philistines. And therefore they called that place the Rock of Escape. And we don't know exactly where that is, but it was somewhere in this En-Gedi, Judah, just west of the Dead Sea. That's where it's going to be, in that really, really, really rugged area. David went up from there and stayed in the strongholds of En-Gedi. So we'll look at this later. Some even think that this may have been Masada, because the name Masada isn't found in the Bible, like in the Old Testament, but it's pretty clear David probably was involved in Masada because it was such an incredible place to defend. It was very easy to be, so he very likely could have. It's sometimes called the stronghold, some people think. So, but he's in the strongholds of En-Gedi. That's where he was on this one. This gives you a little background where David is. So Samuel's from this whole area, the Benjamin Plateau, Ramah, Gibeah. David flees to Samuel. He says, Saul's trying to kill me. He goes to Nob. That's where he gets the sword of Goliath, which he's killed. He's running from Saul. He doesn't even have a sword. He gets Goliath's sword, which is I can't imagine how big it was, but he's able to, he takes it. He goes to Adullam via Gath. He gathers a bunch of followers in this particular area here. Remember Jerusalem. Jerusalem's going to be right up in this area here. The Israelites don't control Jerusalem yet, right? David's going to do that with Joab. They don't control Jerusalem. So David goes to Adullam, and then he goes all the way across over to number 4. I'm just kind of going in the order of what happens in 1 Samuel. He finds refuge for his parents at Mizpah. David takes his parents, why? Because he's like, well, Saul's going to try to kill my parents. So he's watching over them. Many people believe that this area of the Dead Sea could have been dry at that time. Either that or he walked all the way around the south or walked all the way around from the north. Then he, where's number 5? Oh, there, he crosses over, turns to Moab, to Israelite territory. Then he, where's 6? They fight the Philistines. They save Keilah, and David. Remember, that's the whole story where David says, "Are they going to turn me over, Lord?" And he says, "Yeah, they're going to turn you over. Even though you just rescued them, they're going to turn you over to Saul, and you're going to get destroyed." And so David flees from that. Then down here, Saul tries to take David. He escapes the wilderness of Ziph. That's what the story I just told you in 1 Samuel 23. He flees to the wilderness of Maon. Saul continues to follow. Here's the wilderness of Maon. You saw that in the text there. So it's all around in this area. Here's En Gedi. It's all in this area, right by En Gedi. And then, where's 9, 8, no, here's 10. He confronts Saul. Remember, he confronts Saul, and he says, "Why are you trying to kill me? I'm just a dog. I'm just a flea. I'm nothing. I mean, you're the king." Remember, and even when he in the whole cave situation where he could have killed him, but he doesn't. He says, "I could have killed you. I didn't because you're the anointed. I refused to kill him." And then we have that whole situation where he goes to the Philistines at Gath. Really the low point of David's life, like 1 Samuel, like 27, 28, right in there, where David, he becomes a ruler in Ziklag. He fights for the Philistines. He's actually destroying Philistines. They don't know it. And then when the Philistines are going out to fight Saul, the Philistines say, "Wait a minute. This is the one that said Saul's killed his thousands, David's his 10,000s, and where he's going to be in back of us. We're not going to have that." Well, and that's when the whole Ziklag gets burned and destroyed, and David, it says, strengthened himself in God as his men went to kill him and went to stone him to death. But all of this, a lot of this running around is happening right in here, this particular area. Here's a picture of it, another picture looking like in the middle of the Dead Sea. We're looking west from here. Here's En Gedi. Here's the Nahal David. This is En Gedi, this particular area in En Gedi. Nahal Aragot, where there would be water. And I'll show you some pictures of it. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, this just shows how you would travel up through this area. The ascent of Ziz, that's what it's called, this particular ascent where you could travel very relatively easy from the Dead Sea to go up to the Judean highlands, through the wilderness of Judah. Now here's some pictures of En Gedi. This is what it looks like. Now, you can't see from up high because it's in this narrow valley or wadi or Nahal, in the Nahal David. This is what it looks like. There's lots of water there. They could have survived there very, very easily. Here's a cave. Lots of caves in this particular area. This is that 1 Samuel 24 passage. When Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, remember we looked at before, that they were chasing David around the mountain. He hears the Philistines are trying to attack. Saul goes to protect the Philistines. When they get that taken care of, then he comes back. Okay, I'm going after David again. I'm going to try and kill him. It was told, behold, David is in the wilderness of En Gedi. That's what we're talking about right here. En Gedi, the wilderness right there. Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men. These are like the top soldiers. I mean, he is serious about this. From Israel went to seek David and his men in front of the rocks of the wild goats, which is in the En Gedi area. And there are goats there. There are ibexes and different things there. He came to the sheepfolds on the way where there was a cave. Saul wanted to relieve himself. David and his men were sitting in the inner recesses of the cave. That's the whole situation where the men say what? God is sovereign, David. God is sovereign. God has given Saul into your hands. This is what we've been waiting for. I mean, they're claiming the authority of God. This is amazing, awesome. Now's the chance. Now you can be king. Remember, you're the anointed king. This is the guy that's trying to kill you. What does David say? No, I cannot put my hand against the Lord's anointed. He is wicked as he is anointed by God. And so David is a wonderful example of something. I'm not going to take it into my own hands. I'm not going to make this happen in my own strength. It's a very one-sided battle. One guy's trying to kill one guy, and the other guy can't even really defend himself. And yet he says, I'm going to trust God. And so he comes out, and he cuts off a piece of his robe, and he even feels guilty about that. He does. It's like, Saul, here it is. I could have killed you. I didn't. Why are you chasing me? And Saul's, okay, I'll stop chasing. No, he doesn't. He still chases him some more. We have a number of other situations related to that. So, but all this is happening in this area, this wilderness of En Gedi. There's an ibex. There are lots of them in this particular area. It's very rugged. area. This is the kind of a panorama that you can see kind of the Dead Sea, and this is En Gedi, right down in this particular area here. Okay. Now we're looking at, I'm continuing on south. So En Gedi was kind of right in here. Can you see that? Yeah, right. See right there? That's kind of where En Gedi is, right in that area. My little red laser dot is. Now we're going to go down to Masada, and you may have heard of Masada. Very, 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 very significant place. And this is from Masada. It's as if we're up on Masada, and now we're looking down into the Dead Sea. Here's the Dead Sea right here. Here's what's called, I told you, the Lasan. So it's very narrow. You can see it's very narrow. Sometimes it's even, they believe in history, there are times when it actually didn't connect, where you could have walked across that particular area. So we're up in Masada, and you say, what are these funny little things? These weren't done by space aliens. These little structures here. This is actually the Roman encampments that were in, like 71, 72 AD, because this was the very, very last holdout. We'll talk about it more. This is the last holdout for the Jewish people when the Romans conquered them in 70 AD. 70 AD, the Romans come in and destroy Jerusalem. They destroy everything, and they scatter, they kill thousands and thousands and thousands of Jews because the Jews were their thorn in the side. They were constantly fighting against them. Well, and we'll talk about how this happened, but there was a fortress down in Masada, and the last remnant of the Jews go down there and they hide out there. And the Romans, it took them a while, but they encamp and say, we're going to get them all. And they actually, they got almost all of them. We'll see what that is. So we're right here, Masada. Here's Masada. Here's the Lasan, the area where we are. 1 Samuel 23:14, why would I say this? It says, David stayed in the wilderness in the strongholds and reigned in the hill country in the wilderness of Ziph. That's his area. Saul sought him every day, but God did not deliver him to his hand. There are many scholars, we're not sure, because it doesn't use the name Masada, but many believe this. When you see stronghold related to David, it may be a reference to Masada, because it is it's truly the most impressive stronghold in this whole area. So it may have biblically related. We know David was in the area, okay? So here's En Gedi. You can see right here. Here's En Gedi right here. Jordan River comes in here. Moab's over across here. Wilderness of Judah is here. We're just kind of coming down south. And here is Masada. It's this huge rock outcropping that just kind of rises. It's about this Masada is about 1,500 feet above the level of the Dead Sea. Okay, so it's very high. It's very, very significant. The mountain itself, this is about almost 2,000 feet long, so it's pretty long, 2,000 feet long. It's about 650 feet wide. Okay, so it's about 2,000 feet long. So it's significant. They actually, during this time, they actually had little farms up there. They had little, where they would grow vegetables. It was very self-sustaining. The Romans realized they could have truly been up here for years and years and years in 71 AD, because they had an amazing way to get water. We'll talk about it. Well, I'll talk about it now. The big issue here is water. So they had an amazing system that all throughout the hills to the west of here, they had an amazing system where they would dig little channels that would channel unbelievable amount of water that came into cisterns right about halfway up Masada. And so I think they would say in a big rainstorm, they could get enough rain that would last for months and months. Massive cisterns. So they had water, they had food, because they knew this was going to be a siege. And so they had taken literally tons of food in this particular area. Okay, this is another. I'm looking at the Dead Sea from the northwest, just across the Lasan Peninsula. Here again is another picture of Masada. Now we're looking south. Here's the Lasan. You can see even now, right? Here's the pools. This is man-made. See all those things? Those are man-made, so when it dries, they can get the minerals more easily. But you can see even here. You could probably almost walk across it now. But at time of David, it's possibly possible as well. So here's Masada, right here. Herod the Great. What is Herod the Great? What do you know Herod the Great for in your Bible? What did he build? Herod the Great. Well, what did he try to do when Christ was born? tried to kill, Herod the Great was the one that tried to kill Christ because he's the king, and the wise men came through and said there's a king. But Herod the Great's the one who built the temple that Christ would have worshipped in. Herod the Great was the one who built the temple. What you see as the Temple Mount, like today, modern day, Herod the Great was the one who built that, not Solomon. Solomon did the much lower. Herod the Great made it much larger, raised it up. But he was deathly afraid of people trying to kill him for very good reason. He was a very wicked man. He killed his own wife. He killed 2 of his sons. He was a horrible man. Very wicked. So he's very fearful. So because of that, he had like 7 or 8 fortresses just scattered around this whole region, so that in case someone was after him, he could very quickly run. He had one down in Jericho. He had one here. He had the Herodium. He had in Caesarea Philippi, and he had lots of them all over. Well, this was a major one. So he fortifies this in about 33 to about 60 BC. It took 36 to 30 BC. It took about 6 years, and it was amazing. It was actually very beautiful. It's a very good, in case there was a Jewish uprising, this would have been a very good place for Herod to go, so that until the rest of the Roman troops get here, 6 months later, he could survive. He was also concerned about Cleopatra, who's down in Egypt, that she's going to try and invade his territory, so Masada would be a very good area. He could look very clearly. He could see, are there major troops because if you came up from Egypt, you could have come up through this side. You can see it very clearly. Herod brought his family here during some battles. Herod Archelaus took control of it when his father Herod the Great died, but then after about 10 years, the Romans took control of it and themselves. The Roman soldiers took control of it, and they, after AD 6 AD, Roman soldiers would have been stationed. So during the life of Christ, Masada would have been garrisoned by Roman soldiers. They would have been here just in case there was some kind of uprising. Okay, there's another picture of it from the west. As I mentioned, it's about 1,500 feet above the level of the Dead Sea. Now you can see here's the Roman siege areas. They have right here Roman siege one. There's another one over here. There's another one over here. There's some up on this plateau up in here. Because they literally surrounded it. And then you can see right here, this is a wall. Why? Because the Romans built this wall because they don't want anyone getting out. We're killing everybody. Everyone's dying. And so they had a wall, and they had a siege. This is called the Snake Path because it looked like a snake, and you can go up that today. Martha and I walked up that. It's pretty aggressive. Or you can also take a tram. It'll carry you up if you want to do it that way. But there's no way the Roman soldiers could have overtaken Masada on this side. So we're going to look at the back side. Actually, I think, there we go. So here's the main Roman siege camp, because on the backside, and I'll show you a picture of it, but on the backside, they're going to build a ramp, and they're going to use Jewish slaves to build a dirt ramp to go all the way up to the top. You can see it in this, here it is right here. So originally it just went straight down, and the Romans built this siege ramp right here so they could overtake Masada, and then they built this big siege tower that they used to push against the wall. They had a wall at the very top, and they end up burning it, and they started on fire. This is about 72, 73 AD when the Romans are trying to destroy the last Jews that are holding out on there. Yeah, you can see there's a siege camp on this side. Here's a snake path. There's a bunch of siege camps over here. So it's literally surrounded by siege. So in AD 70, when Jerusalem's destroyed, there's a whole group of Jews that run as fast as they can down to Masada, and they take control of it. They were able to get control of it for the Romans that were there. They take control of it, and they don't just sit up there. From 70 to 73 AD, the Jews that have gone up to this area, they don't just sit up there. I think if they would have just sat up there, they'd have been fine. They don't. They're just going down. They're just we're going to attack the Romans. So they would send raiding parties off of Masada down against Roman, because the Romans hadn't built the encampments and all that. They hadn't built the wall. They hadn't done any of that. But the Jews are like, this is our land. We're going to do everything we can. I think there's about 1,000. I think there's 967 people that are there. 967 people that are on this. They could have survived there for probably a decade or more, easily, because of the water that was there, the water that keeps coming through the cisterns, because of all the food there. But they're not satisfied. They're like, this is our land. Stop it. I mean, we're going to do everything we can. And the Romans finally said, okay, we are done. This is done. We're not going to let this happen. So then, in 73 AD, the Romans come down, and they make all these encampments. And in 72, they decide they're going to destroy it. And so they march with a whole legion. A whole legion of the Roman, the 10th legion, marches down there, and they bring with them thousands of Jewish prisoners. Why? Because they need the prisoners to do the work, because they're going to build a siege ramp. And so Jewish prisoners, which makes it more complicated, right? Because if you're Jewish people up on top, and your fellow Jews are being forced at the risk of their own lives, the Romans are making them do this, it just becomes more difficult for the Jewish people that are up there as they build the Roman siege ramp. Yeah. Dan.
I've heard tell that the snake path could be secured by one guy.
Very easily. Snake path, yeah, or a very small number of guys. The snake path could be secured by one guy. Yes, very much. Because you can only go one at a time through it. You can't go, a whole bunch. And so that's what they were able to do. So they know they got to do it in a different way. And so they build the siege ramp. And so on the eve of the Passover in 73, it becomes pretty obvious that the Romans are going to be able to conquer it, because they push this tower up. They push the tower against the wall. And it was interesting that there was a wind that began to blow as the Romans light fire to parts of the wall were reinforced with wood and timbers. And so the Romans light fire. But then there was a wind that began to blow from the east, so that's a very strong one. It began to light their their siege tower on fire. And the Jewish people said, great, God is working for us. But then the wind shifted. And the wind shifted, and it went into the wall, and it actually began to burn the wall. It burned the wall very, very significantly on the eve of the Passover in 73 AD. And so they realized, and the wall basically disintegrated, and they knew that it's just a matter of time. And so that night, Eleazar, who was the key leader of them, he went and they talked. And they said, we're going to all die. And you've probably heard the story of what they did. So they just had a descending order, in where all the men went out, and 10 men were selected to stay alive. And all the fathers killed all their families. The 10 men killed all the fathers. And then one guy killed the 10 men, and he killed himself. And so they literally killed everyone, because they said, we are not going to. They destroyed everything that was there. And they said, we are not going to allow them to take his life, because they knew kind of what was going to happen. It was going to be ugly, what was going to happen. But there were actually 2 women and 5 children that hid themselves down in some of the foodstuffs or wherever, so they actually survived. And so the Romans interviewed them. Josephus wrote a whole history of this. Josephus was a first century historian. He wrote a whole history of this. It's possible he may have even interviewed these women, because it's a very detailed account of what happens. But it just shows you the tenacity of the Jewish people for their land, and how dear it is to them, and how important it was to them. Even today, Masada, this is relatively, they don't do it all today, but they, in the past, this is on the top of Masada, where they would do a lot of their swearing in ceremonies for the IDF, or particularly special forces. They don't do it as much now, because it's just, there's too many, but for many, many, many years, they would go to top of Masada. Why? Because Masada is a statement. It is a statement for them. This is our land, and we will do whatever it takes to make sure that our people have land, even to the point of death. We will do that. So it has a major amount of significance to them. There is in 1927, one of the Jewish people said, Masada will never fall again. That's one of their statements. Masada will never fall again, meaning that we will have our land, and you will never drive. And it just informs even a little bit about what we're talking about when we talk about the modern day situation. It's related. This is not a new story. This did not start in 1948. This didn't even start in 73 AD, right? This is long before that. Yeah. Zach.
So, here what you said, that's a very helpful background to this. I'm still a little confused how David or others at that time, how did they survive for something? The sisters weren't there, how
Oh, how did David, the question is, how would David have survived like in Masada? We don't know. He clearly spent more time in En-Gedi, because that's where the water was, right? And even in this area, there probably were some ancient things. Herod really built it out in 36 to 30 BC, but there were probably some ancient things, like they were always building, like we went into one of the cisterns that were there, and it's almost as big as this room, and just one of them. It was massive. So they would have even then had things that were there. It wouldn't have been as massive. And remember, David didn't have that many guys. Saul had 3,000. David didn't have that many guys. So they would have gone down to get water. So there was a way to find water. But yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, Becky.
When Herod built the stronghold of Sodom, did it have a palace? Did it have
Yeah, great question. Maybe some of the time I'll show a picture of it. When Herod built the stronghold of Masada, they have a palace. Phenomenal. Beautiful. Even today, you can actually see the frescoes that are on the wall. It was considered, even throughout the Roman Empire, it was considered one of the most beautiful places, because he built a whole massive palace with pillars and, talking about a view, you had a view, but it was incredible. But it was basically on the side. You had to go down probably 200 feet down the side through steps. It was stunningly beautiful. Well, who built it? Herod didn't build it. Jewish people built it, right? They were the slaves. They're the ones who built it. Yeah, no, it was absolutely stunning. Now, when we look at it, you just see like this. You see all these ruins and stuff like this. No, it was beautiful. Like even today, you can see the beautiful tile mosaics that tells you there was much. This was a stunning. It doesn't, now it's abandoned, not abandoned, but it's just, it's ruins. No, back then it was incredibly beautiful. Herod had a swimming pool on the top of Masada. Yep, he had a swimming pool. Now he was nice because he built it near the biggest cistern. So, if you're a Jewish slave there, bad news. Herod wants to go swimming today or tomorrow. We got to fill the pool. He actually had a pool. It was beautiful. There were fountains. There were pools. It was, I know. You're like, how in the world? Yeah, it's amazing what they did. They brought people from Rome, Italy, to do the designs, to do the artwork, to do the frescoes. It was truly stunning. They would bring marble. They brought stuff up here, marble, stone, because they wanted it to be beautiful. And if you're Herod, you can do whatever you want. And it was all through taxation, right? It's all through taxation. Why did Joseph and Mary? Why did they have to go down to Bethlehem? A census. What's the purpose of the census? Oh, we just want to see how many people live here. No, it's for taxation. That's the whole point of it. And so we need to figure out who are here, how much you owe, and all that taxation. Herod gets a major cut. And so he builds, like when you look at what he built for the Jewish people, the temple. Well, yeah, but he built that on the backs of the Jewish people, right? As slaves. So it would have been they liked it. Obviously, you can tell by the Jewish religion, they loved it. And yet, it was very, 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 very costly. And plus, he had all kinds of other building projects all throughout the Herodium, Masada, Caesarea. That in and of itself is absolutely stunningly beautiful. So yes, it didn't look like this. It would have been, if you were to think of an ancient, beautiful, ancient city or town, that's what it would have been like. With all the, I want to say modern day conveniences, all the modern day convenience of the 1st century BC. It would have had all of them at the best would have been here. For Herod, not for anyone else. For Herod and those people right around him. Yeah, Ben.
Is there a lot of active archaeology in Masada, or is it mostly well-explored?
Is there a lot of active archaeology? Absolutely. There's archaeology going on everywhere. They show tons of archaeology going. It's active to a degree, but they could dig more and more, but there's other places that are probably more strategic. Like from when Martha and I were there 38 years ago, totally different. A lot more stuff has been uncovered. Lots of stuff. Okay. So that's the Dead Sea. Okay, here's the Lasan Peninsula. Any other questions, Masada? Yeah, Dan.
I just have a statement. This is changing my whole view of the Old Testament when David went into the wilderness.
Yeah.
The books all had trees and,
Right.
and now it's different.
Yeah. When you see David running from Saul, oh, we're just kind of running through the jungle, and there's trees, and well, no, it was. You can see what the area is like. It was brutal. And you had to find water. Everything was related to water. That's why a lot of it is related to En-Gedi. Absolutely. And that's why it also gives you picture. Remember when David's mighty men, David's having a battle, and he says what? Oh, if I could just have a drink out of Bethlehem. And you think, come on, there's water everywhere. Well, no, not in this situation. And they risk their lives, and they go back and they get the water of Bethlehem. They bring it back to David, and what does he do? No. And he does the right thing. He says, no, he pours it out. It literally says, as a sacrifice to the Lord. How could I drink this water that you, God, of the sacrifice? It just shows David's heart. And he honored them, not dishonored. He honored them by not drinking, by pouring it out as a sacrifice. Lord. But related to your question, Dan, yes, it gives you perspective. Water was everything. And so when he's running from Saul, there's lots of concern. And this is the area he would have been running around in. And this right here, Lisan, remember I talked to Lisan? Well, he takes his parents, so this is kind of the foothills of Masada, where David may have been, or En-Gedi's to the north here. But anyway, we know he definitely took his parents over to the Transjordan. He takes it to Mizpah. He takes them way over there. Why? He wants them safe. I don't want Saul to kill my mom and dad and all that, so he takes them over there. So it just gives you a perspective of what that was like. And also he flees from Absalom. Same issue. That's a whole other story. Flees from Absalom in that. Okay? Questions? Yeah, Eric.
Just backing up a little bit when you talk about the cistern, it says this room.
Yeah.
Natural or was
No, man-made. Not natural. Man-made. Yeah, and that was just one of many. Lots and lots and lots. So and it was all fed by, all of that one wasn't direct, but it was fed by, like also what they have, this is a whole other thing, is the whole top of Masada. You saw the whole top? The whole top of Masada is a drainage system that doesn't drain over the edge. Everything drains into the cistern. So everything on the top of Masada. I mean, you look at all these angles, you see these little, like you have gutters on your house. Why? Because you don't want the gutter to go in your basement, the water going in your basement. Well, no, they have all of these things. Every house, everything is going into everything. Every drop of water, as much as possible, they want to go and sit there, saving it all. And so it's all from the whole top of Masada. You see that whole thing? That's all draining down into cisterns. Now they have lower cisterns that are coming from all the surrounding hills. They had to carry that up. Okay, they had to carry that up. But there was natural that would have gone on the top, that would have gone into the natural cistern. The man-made cisterns. Yeah, Larry.
Are there any guesses as to where Sodom?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Great question. Good question. I might see that. Yeah, good question. Must read my notes. Okay, Sodom and Gomorrah is going to be in this area. Okay, Genesis 19:24. Now I'm kind of changing stories on you. Remember, I'm trying to give you biblical stories so that when you think of areas, you think of biblical stories. So in your mind, Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's in the area of the Dead Sea. Okay, and many believe that it could have been a major part of shaping, particularly the Dead Sea. Maybe there was some natural outflow of that, but it's probably in this area. Genesis 19. Remember Genesis 18, where God has that whole situation where he goes to Abraham, and he has that whole thing related to Lot. He says, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm going to destroy it. That whole thing where Abraham says, what if there's 50 righteous people? 40, all the way down to 10. You say, well, maybe, I know a lot. Scripture calls a lot of righteous man. A little bit difficult, but that's what Scripture says. He's a righteous man. It says his soul was just plagued as he was surrounded by that evil. But Abraham's probably thinking, he got Lot, his wife. She has issues later on too. He's got his daughters. They get married. Boy, at least he's reached 10 people, right? At least he's reached 10 people. And God says, if there's 10 righteous people, and there's 10 people that are following me, I won't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. That's amazing. But there aren't, right? So that's the background of the story. So they don't have that. And this is what's happened is God's the angels have come and drug Lot and his wife and his 2 daughters. They drugged them, literally almost drugged them out of Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, they drugged them out of that. And then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. Somebody wants to say, well, there was a meteor. No, it was just God. God destroyed it. And he overthrew those cities and all the valleys. So this was not just a little, ding. This was not a tactical bomb that just took out Sodom and Gomorrah. No, this was the whole area. He overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. So tells you what? Lot went there, right? Lot said, this is the most lush area. Abraham gave him the choice, and he said, oh, this is the most beautiful area. Now you wouldn't choose this area. No way. And so what does it say then? The text there, it destroyed it all. It destroyed all the valley, all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground. But his wife, because the angel said, don't look back. But his wife from behind him will look back, and she became a pillar of salt. Now, she is not judged just for a physical looking back. It's very clear in the text that she's looking back with longing. Looking back, she's being disobedient. Abraham rose early in the morning and went to the place where he had stood before the Lord. So the night before, they'd gone through this whole discussion about 50, 40, 30. He goes back and he looks down, and what does he see? It's like worse than a nuclear bomb went off. Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward all the land of the valley, he saw, and behold, the smoke of the land ascended like the smoke of a furnace. And the closest thing to hell that you can kind of imagine in an earthly sense, were God's judgment on this particular area. And that's right in this area. This is kind of a little different map. It's related to your question, Larry. Here's, so Masada's going to be up in here, and Gedi's up in here. Here's Jericho, Jordan River. Here's the northern part of the Dead Sea. It's kind of laid on its side. And actually here you can see those evaporation pools. This is actually a satellite picture that's kind of laid on its side. That's actually what it looks like today, because they have all these evaporation pools because they're trying to get all the minerals. But anyway, here's the Lasan. You can see, oh wow, that's almost dry there. Yep. Like we said before, because of all the irrigation that's being taken out from the Jordan River further north. Many believe, we're not sure, but many believe Sodom and Gomorrah were probably in this area. We don't know. We just don't know. We don't know. Here's a text. Abraham in Hebron. So he's up in Hebron. Here's Hebron. Goes down to here. Looked out across the plains below him towards Sodom and Gomorrah. The entire plain was engulfed in churning billows of smoke. Okay. And remember, they said to leave. Well, Lot fled to Zoar. We don't know for sure, but it's probably in this particular area down here somewhere. It is. So Sodom and Gomorrah would be, when you think of the Dead Sea, think of the Lasan. It's right in that kind of that area, probably right in there, which makes sense if it does a major change. We don't have any satellite pictures of what it looked like before, so we don't know. And maybe it did flow all the way through. It was not a Dead Sea. Because it could have changed all the geography of this particular area in here. So that's where Sodom, probably, we're not sure. Why don't we know where Sodom and Gomorrah is? Why can't we do archaeology there? Because it got totally destroyed by God. There's nothing left. It's destroyed. It's a nuclear bomb. It's just totally destroyed. There's lots and lots and lots of scholars that have done research and tried to do archaeology. There's just not a lot of things to do archaeology on there. Yeah, Birch.
There's a Christian archaeologist that actually lives in Israel.
Yep.
And he's gone to that side, and you can dig a wall on the side of the Dead Sea and find sulfur balls.
Oh, okay.
And so he's like, this is my theory of where it probably was, and it's right there.
Right.
There. So he's like, you can still see these. In fact, they're like lying all over the ground, and you can dig into the wall and see it.
Yep.
They're down.
Something happened there.
But something happened.
Something happened.
And why are all these sulfur balls that came from somewhere? So.
Yeah, one of the clearest examples of God's judgment. When God judges, right? And it's very, very clear. And they have a time, right? You have the whole lifetime of Lot. That they had many years when they could have responded, and yet they don't. They don't come to God, and so God judges them because of their wickedness. Okay. Any questions on that at all? Okay. We'll keep going. We're just going to continue down south. This is the area of Edom. We could do a whole thing on Petra, but this whole area is Edom. Who lived in Edom? Esau. Okay, Deuteronomy 2:8. So this is when the children of Israel are coming back up through. We passed beyond our brothers, the sons of Esau, who lived in Seir, also the Edom area, away from the Arabah road. Arabah, I showed you that, away from Elath. Elath is a modern day city. Elat. From Ezion Geber, we turn and pass through by the way of the wilderness of Moab. Okay, so the children of Israel, so that's this area right here. Arabah, here's the Arabah. The children of Israel, they, as far as we know, went to Elat. Well, they came across the Red Sea here. They went down Sinai. We're not totally sure, but probably Sinai. Mount Sinai is in this area on the Sinai Peninsula, what's modern day called the Sinai Peninsula. They continue up through. They go up through Numbers chapter 13. Kadesh Barnea in this particular area where 10 spies say no, 2 say go, and they have to turn around and they have to wander for 40 years. But they end up going down through the Arabah. That's why I'm going to show you some pictures of this area, because the Israelites are in this area a lot. And then they're going to end up coming, when they come back, they come through Edom, they come through Moab, they come through on the eastern side. Remember I mentioned it before, is they had the great Red Sea crossing, but God wants them to have another very obvious miracle, so they have to cross over the Jordan River in an obvious miracle, so when they're about to enter the Promised Land, they know they've just seen, all of them have seen, because they were little, but all the generation of Israelites who didn't believe died. They get killed off. There was probably, I think, and I estimate like 1,500 funerals a day, if you average it for 40 years to kill off to the 2 million people. I mean, it was a constant reminder, we didn't believe God, we didn't believe God, we didn't believe God. And so they're wandering in the wilderness in this particular area. And here's Elat and Ezion Geber. Okay, just to show you some pictures of what it looked like. This is on the southern border of Canaan. Just as kind of the areas they're going to be wandering through in the wilderness. Here you can see where the area is. Here's Elat. They would have been wandering in this area, also farther west as well. This is called the Ascent of the Scorpions. Probably not a real enjoyable place where you would want to take your family. That's the kind of things they're wandering through. It's very difficult. And what's one of the constant issues for them as they're on their journeys that they can't find? Well, they think water, exactly, Shane. Water, and then God's going to kill us. You sent us out here to die. Well, this is the kind of area, yeah. I mean, how would you feed? I mean, how would you give water for 2 million people? Yeah, it does give you an idea of Moses, and he was wrong, but his frustration with them as they're complaining again at the very, 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 very end. This is 38 years into it, 39 years into it, is when he is actually disqualified. He's wandered with them for that long while they've been complaining and whining the whole time. So this is an area, what it looks like in this Arabah. This is in the Arabah area. Just very dry, very desolate wasteland. Okay, this is the Arabah. You see Arabah right there? This is that area right in here. Now we're going to look at Elat. Elat is a modern-day city. I've been there. It's right in this area here. So here's the Red Sea. You can see it right down there. Red Sea. Well, Elat does have biblical significance. So we've come down the Dead Sea. We've come down the Arabah. And now we're going to look at Elat, just very briefly. 1 Kings 9. King Solomon, so third king of Israel, built a fleet of ships in Ezion Geber. We don't know where that is, but it's probably, biblically it says it's near Elat, on the shore of the Red Sea, which is, you have those, those 2 fingers pointing up, and that's what it is. It's right here. It's on the top of the one finger is Elat. Okay. Hiram sent servants with the fleet, sailors who knew the sea, along with servants of Solomon. They went to Ophir. They took 420 talents of gold from there. They brought it to King Solomon. So Solomon had the people of Israel weren't typically a seagoing people. But during Solomon, they went down to Elat. So here's Elat. Here's the Red Sea. You're hearing about, the last 2 weeks. All these ships that are being either, I don't think you were hijacked, but taken over and missile shot at them. Well, it's going to be in the Red Sea or down south further, Gulf of Aden, down in these areas. Queen of Sheba was from this area, which is down further, which is modern day like Yemen, I think is that roughly in this area here. So you're even further down. So Solomon had all the way down to this part of the Red Sea, down in Elat. This is if you're looking down to Elat from the northwest. It's a very, very modern-day city. Here's the Red Sea. Here's Elat in this area. I'm looking for the west. Here's you're looking north. This is Elat. This is kind of that area where Solomon would have built his port and travel. Another picture of that. This is the southernmost. This southern part of the Red Sea was truly the very most southern place where Israel had control. And it was really only during their heyday. Okay, well, I'm gonna stop there. We'll pick up and look next time at the Transjordan Plateau. And actually, this is our last class until Christmas break. So we don't have class next week. We'll come back, I think it's the 14th or 7th of January. I don't know. Watch your bulletin. It'll tell you when we're restarting. So that gives you an idea. Any questions? Any questions overall? I trust this is helpful for you and just is able to help you visualize different biblical stories where different things are, even that you read your Bible a little differently. With more. I trust you read your Bible. I remember in the 60s when my grandpa and grandma got a colored TV, and I'd even watch the news because it was color. Well, I trust this kind of gives you, probably like 67 gives you a color on that. So, okay, yeah, Larry, and then,
This is more speculative, but it makes sense that there would be a river or a stream going from the southern part of the Dead Sea down to the river.
It would make sense. Geographically, it makes sense. Yeah, because you got this big finger of sea going up. Yeah, it would make sense. And so it's very possible that when the Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed, it's very possible. We just don't know, and we have no records. There's nothing that indicates that. Yeah.
When the children of Israel were wandering through the wilderness, God did provide water
Yes.
over and over again. Is any of that water still flowing, or was it flowing during the time of David wandering through the wilderness, or was it more of a singular event that dried up?
Yeah, the question is there are several very miraculous times where God does provide water. Some of them where God takes bitter water, like at Meribah, and he makes it sweet. But there's other times, two particular times, and there could have been many other times, right? They're wandering 40 years in the wilderness, right? There could have been other times, but we have two where the first one where God says, strike the rock. He strikes the rock, and water gushes out. And it wasn't like like the drinking fountain out here, right? It had, you have to fill 2 million, you have 2 million people have enough water. And then the second time is when he's supposed to speak to the rock, 38 years later, and he strikes the rock. Your question was, are those still flowing? Not that we know of. Now there's some people say we know where that rock is, and there's some evidence, but there's no water flowing out. Because why? That was a miraculous thing where God specifically said there shouldn't be water here, and there will be water. So not at this point. Now it does talk about oases and different places they did go where there was water. There's water in some of these areas, not a lot, and so they would have gone to those areas. But yeah, those particular places were miraculous. They're not continuing. So, okay. Well, good. Well, I trust that that's helpful, and I trust that you're in your Bible. You're looking at the back of the Bible, right? If you learn nothing else, when you read your Bible, you're going to the back. If you don't have a Bible with the maps, get a Bible with maps, okay? Or there's actually a great handout. I know both Dan and Larry pointed out to me. You can get it. It's about a Bible size, and you can get it online. And it's now for those of us, you'll need because it's very, 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 very fine print. But it is helpful. It has overlays that shows different time periods of Scripture that you can actually it is even helpful. You just put it in your Bible. That would be very helpful as well. And the other thing, just real practically, use your computer. It's very helpful for these things. Actually, a lot of these pictures I got from a guy who's taking, but a lot of them are just from online. You can find a lot of this stuff online. It's very helpful. Okay, let me close. Father, thank you so much for your word. Thank you for we can trust it. It's truly from you. May we live in light of these great truths that you are sovereign, you are good, and you've saved us to worship you in your name. Amen.